Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope as always that you're all doing well. It feels like I've been gone from YouTube for the longest time at this point. It is currently the 19th of June and so far I have posted one video this month. Literally just one, after doing 3 videos a week throughout the last lockdown. I think I mentioned in a previous video that I had like loads of overtime at work and I thought I'd managed to do some content around it, but turns out your girl was really tired, so YouTube did get put on hold for a little while. Hopefully now I am back. I'm definitely not going to be back to 3 videos a week for a while. But we are back today for an eyeshadow palette review, and it is a little bit of a controversial one. This one has been causing a little bit of a stir online. I have with me the brand new Mardi Gras palette from W7. This is their latest release. It literally came out on Thursday. It's currently Saturday as I'm filming this. And if you've already seen this one online, then you probably already know that it is a dupe for the one and only Be Perfect and Stacey Marie Love Tahiti Carnival 3 palette. I think I said that the wrong way round, but you know, there we go. The Love Tahiti palette. I haven't got the original, so we won't be able to do a comparison, but I'm just going to do this in my usual format. So the details, the swatches, the tutorial, and then my final thoughts on the palette. All of the timestamps are in the description box down below as always. But before we jump in, I am just going to give a quick little disclaimer. W7 have sent me this palette in PR, and they did ask me to create a look for the launch of this palette along with a select group of influencers, which I will all link down below. And that was sponsored work, so that was work that I was paid for. However, the review itself is not sponsored. I'm not getting any money for this. They don't even know I'm making it. They haven't asked me to do it or anything. And of course, all opinions are going to be my own. So without further ado, let's jump into the details for this palette. So let's talk about the W7 Mardi Gras palette then. I don't think they've actually ever duped a bigger palette before. Normally it's much smaller ones like the Anastasia Beverly Hills ones and things like that. And I think the first thing that kind of jumps out to a lot of people is that when you look at the packaging, it is pretty similar to the one from the original Carnival palette. It is cardboard packaging and the details are embossed on, so I would say that this is probably one of the best looking palettes that they have done so far. And when we open it up, we have a nice big mirror and we have the shades that do look pretty identical to the Be Perfect ones. Now, I don't have the Be Perfect palette, so I can't compare it, but it is a palette that I have wanted to buy in the past. I do think it looks absolutely amazing. And while it isn't super expensive, it's a little bit harder for me to justify a £36, I think, £36.95 palette. So when I found out the price of this palette, I was pretty impressed because this is $14.95 for 40 eyeshadows. Like, that is a very affordable price. I thought W7 would definitely be charging closer to the £20 mark, but no, we're looking at $14.95, which is just under half of the price of the original palette. The original palette contains 1.6 grams per shadow, whereas the weight on this one is listed as 36 grams for the whole palette, which works out at about 0.9 grams per shadow. So I thought that maybe the W7 palette wasn't as cheap as I originally thought, but then when you look at the cost per gram, it's actually looking pretty good for both palettes. The original Be Perfect palette is 58p per gram, which is brilliant. It's super affordable. And it turns out that the W7 palette is 42p per gram, which is insanely good value for money. It's around the same price point as Morphe palettes, and it's a little bit more expensive than Beauty Bay palettes, so I was very happy to see that. Now, in terms of the information that we get on the back of the palette, it's all pretty standard at this point. We have the diagram on the back, all of the shades are numbered, and we do have a few different ingredient lists. We have 1, 2, 3, 4... I can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ingredient lists, so they are all listed here, and it tells you which eyeshadow corresponds to which one. We also have the shelf life after opening, which is 18 months, and we do have a warning that says it is not intended for immediate use on the eye, as this is a pressed pigment palette. The main thing that that means basically is that you are going to get staining with this palette, and I can confirm I had it pretty bad yesterday. I think after every use of this palette, I feel like we all know at this point that that is something that we expect to happen with pressed pigment. Now, it doesn't mention anything on the palette about being cruelty-free or vegan. I'm assuming it is not vegan. However, in terms of being cruelty-free, W7 have some messaging on their website, which I will put up on the screen for you. They do specify that they do not test on animals over here and that they do not sell in countries where it is a requirement. So that is it for the details of the product. And again, just so you can see them, these are the shades on the inside. I mean, the color scheme is absolutely beautiful. Obviously, we can't give the credit here to W7. That does go to Be Perfect and Stacey Stacey Marie. So let's jump into some swatches and see what we're in for. Alright, so we do have 40 shades to swatches, so I do want to get through it pretty quickly because otherwise I know editing just takes absolute ages. So I'm just going to swatch the shades and then any comments that I've got to make, I'll do them afterwards. I would normally go row by row, but just because the colours are in the columns this way, I think it's just going to be a bit nicer to do it this way. So starting off, we have the shade Envy, followed by Emerald. Then we have the shade Acid. Our first metallic is the shade Tahitian Pearl. Then we have Sapphire. Then we have Olive, Zesty, Shamrock, Venice, and finally Riviera. Alright, so there are our blues and our greens. I feel like some of these have swatched great. I feel like it's exactly what I expected from Pressed Pigments. The blue Sapphire, not great. That is not a great swatch. I feel like this particular shade of blue can be a little bit dodgy, but other than that, most of them are swatched great. I think they look like really beautiful colors. They are a little bit chunky. Again, they are Pressed Pigments. The shade Zesty, which is one of the metallics, that one feels so buttery. However, I will say they're not super reflective. I mean, Tahitian Pearl, slightly reflective, Zesty not so much. So next up, we're moving into some warmer shades. So to start us off, we have Cider, then Attire, then another metallic, which is Colombina, Vieux Carré, Old Fashioned, Peachy, Tuscan Sun, Living, Il Dottore, and Invitation. Again, pretty good swatches here. I don't really have any comments. Yeah, again, kind of what I would expect from W7 Pressed Pigments at this point. I have to say, the shade Colombina, I haven't tried it yet on the eyes. In the palette, it looks a little bit like a boring bronze shade, but it's actually got some gold glitters in there, and it's a lot more interesting than I expected it to be, so definitely need to use it at some point. Next up, we have Alter Ego, Carnival, Flambeau, Feathers, Moretta, Volto, Jammin, Glow Stick, and Ball. Again, I don't really have much to say about the mattes in this case, but I do think it's interesting to see how the different metallics are showing up. I really, really like the shade of Feathers, but kind of like Zesty, it's not looking super metallic, is it? It's a really interesting shade, it's really pretty, but it's just not really popping. Whereas Volto and Ball, they are definitely that much more creamy formula. I mean, Ball has almost swatched like a glitter. Have I used that one? I'm trying to remember. I think I tried to use it over black eyeliner, thinking it would really pop, and I don't think I really got anything from it, but I definitely need some more experimenting with them. I am definitely removing some of my fake tan as I'm removing the swatches. It needs to be redone anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but yeah, that's definitely not normally supposed to happen. And finally, onto our last two rows, we're going to start off with Identity, followed by Crew, then Royalty, Beads, Van Dyck, Unmask, Rex. Now this one, I'm not sure if it has a spelling mistake or not. I think it might be Behave, but it's spelt with two E's, Behave. I don't know, but I think it's meant to be Behave. Bacchus. And finally, Midnight. I mean, these colours do kind of speak to my soul. Royalty, again, is another metallic that I haven't used, but I'm looking at it now and I really, really want to. I have used Unmasked and I have used Behave. Behave, just like Zesty, not super, super interesting. I think I ended up layering Unmask on top of it, and that immediately just, you know, kind of gave it a little bit more. So overall, I feel like those are some pretty good swatches. As I said, because they are Pressed Pigments, if they didn't look like that, I would be quite disappointed and I would be quite concerned about the pigmentation. But I definitely feel like the palette swatches the way I expect it to. Crumbly, but buttery, and just giving me quite a good amount of pigmentation. So very happy with that. I do just briefly want to talk about the shade names and the palette and the theme of it, because I feel like some of them fit in really well and others I'm just a bit unsure about. So when I think of the name Mardi Gras, I definitely think more like European, more French, more Italian. I definitely think more of a masquerade, and I do really like the names that relate to Commedia dell'arte, which is something that I've studied both in school and in university. So there's a lot of things that I'm recognizing, like Colombina, like Il Dottore. I feel like having names like Venice and Tuscan Sun and Unmasked, that really, really feels appropriate to that whole theme. And then we just have some completely different ones, like we have Shamrock, we have Tahitian Pearls, and they just make me think of completely different things. So I do wish they had stuck to one theme. I realize that might be a little bit difficult when you have 40 shades to name. But yeah, that was just me being a little bit picky. So that is it for all of the details of the palettes as well as the swatches. So let's finally move on into the tutorial for this look. All right guys, let's do this. I have, as always, got my Pinoise base on, ready to go. By the way, I have been trying to film this video for a couple of days already. I think I'm on my 4th attempt and I'm really struggling. I think I've gone about 2-3 weeks without filming. I can't actually remember how long it's been. And it's actually really hard to get back into it. I keep having like little technical issues. I keep forgetting to do things. So I decided yesterday to leave it and try again today, and I'm hoping that on the 3rd day it is now going to go well. So anyway, let's actually jump into the palette. I'm going to start off with a Morphe M124 just as always, and I'm going to go into this shade down here, which is Van Dyck, spelled with a Y. I don't know what it's a reference to or anything, but there you go. And I'm just going to start the way I always do, which is just to place my crease colour, just thinking about where that cut crease is going to be sitting. So I find that keeping my eye open is the best way of figuring that out. And then I'm going to come in underneath as well, round the shape off, pop some right on the outside portion, and now I'm just going to add a bit more and get it nice and evened out. Alright, not bad for our first shade. It's definitely not the most pigmented eyeshadow out there, definitely not the best formula, but for something more affordable, I think we're starting off pretty good. So let's jump into our second shade now, and it's going to be all the way over here. It's going to be the shade Rex, and I'm going to take a Morphe M506, which is a nice small brush. I wouldn't mind getting a couple more of these at some point. In fact, I'm basically just waiting for Morphe to have a nice sale again like they did last year, and then that way I can just stock up. So I'm going to pack the colour on, half on top of the previous shade, half off, and just start blending. A really nice pigmentation on this shade. They're blending out together really easily. Yeah, absolutely no complaints from me. Going pretty well so far. Okay, next we're gonna move back into the palette slightly into this shade, which is called Beads, which yesterday I called Beans, which would be a very different shade in my opinion. I'm taking it on a Zoeva 231, and basically at this point we're just packing on colours, trying to fit as many on my eye as we possibly can, and just blending. Really taking my time with these. Pigmentation on this one is really nice. You can see how well it's picking up. I mean, colours do always pick up pretty well on these Zoeva 231 brushes anyway. You know, a lot of brands know how to do neon pinks. I've had them from W7 before. So I would be disappointed if there was a really bright pink and it wasn't performing, because I know they can do it. Again, still going great with the blending. I'm just gonna carry on packing on my colors. So next, I'm gonna go into Invitation over here. So this is slightly more of a warmer, kind of corally pink. And just carrying on, basically. Pretty self-explanatory at this point. Once you've done one color, it's just the same thing with all of them. See, this is what kept happening when I was trying to film yesterday. I use manual focus on my camera and I tell it to focus, and instead of focusing it actually just goes super blurry. And I don't realise I carry on talking, and then I look up and we're out of focus. Fun, 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 fun. I mean, again, it's packing on really well. It does appear really pigmented. It takes a little bit of work at the beginning, but once you've packed it on, I mean, you can't argue with that color payoff, can you? It's looking a little bit messy right now, but it's definitely one of those trust the process looks, so we're just gonna keep going. This time I'm gonna take the shade Living over here, which is a lot brighter. And this time I'm taking a Sigma E36, so a much smaller brush. And I'm gonna start off at the front. Just gonna blend pretty softly and then carry on at the back. I do feel like maybe these shades don't appear super different. I can't really tell where Invitation finishes and Living starts. Okay, so as you can see, again, it is looking nice and pigmented on the eye now. We did have to do some building up, but it definitely gets there eventually. It is looking a little bit rough around the edges though. So what I'm gonna do now is just go back through all of the shades from darkest to lightest, just speed through it and just make sure that's a little bit more seamless. Alright, so I just made it up to beads, and I do want to add a colour in the middle just to add more, see how they layer on and all of that. So I'm going to go into Glow Stick over here, which is a lovely pink, and this one's going in on a Sigma E36. Right now they're just layering on top of each other really, really well, and I would say that these are a pleasure to work with. Like, this is actually enjoyable. Yes, I'm having to dip back in a fair bit. Yes, I'm having to build them up, but it's not difficult to use. Like, it's not going patchy. I'm not really struggling to pile it on or anything like that. It takes a little bit more work than other palette, but it is enjoyable to use. So now I'm going to jump back into Invitation and then into Living. I'm going to add one last colour. I am going to go into Il Dottore down here, and this time I'm taking a Morphe M514, which is again a favourite brush of mine, and I need about 4 more. And I'm going to use that to finish blending out the back edge here and just extend it a little bit and basically just fade it out. Oh no, oh my god. I've got a lot of fallout underneath and my brush just accidentally picked that up. Not something that's ever really happened to me before. I think we're good. Let me add a bit more of Il Dottore. There we go, that's giving a really nice softened edge. Just gonna pull it back into the remainder of my P. Louise base. And I haven't added any extra product, so I am just gonna use the brush at the front as well, just to finish softening that out. Alright, so that is it for the crease shades. We're going to leave it here for now. I'm just going to be repeating myself really at this point. It's nothing I haven't already said, but I think the pigmentation looks fantastic. I think the colours are gorgeous. You can see a really, really nice gradient in the blend. Again, not the best formula out there. It did take a little bit of building up, but definitely not the worst either, and it wasn't difficult to work with. I actually find these really, really enjoyable to use. Really just like a nice experience to blend them once you've got the pigmentation on. So yeah, so far for the crease shades, very, very happy. So I'm gonna go and cut my crease off camera now, and then I'll come back and we'll have a play with a few extra shades and try out some of the metallics, because you guys know that I have a bit of a difficult relationship with W7 metallics, let's say. So yeah, I'm just gonna go and cut my crease and I'll be right back. All right, so my cut crease is on. I've just gone ahead and used the Blank Canvas paint by P. Louise because I'm really, really enjoying it for cut creases at the moment. So I'm just gonna start by going in with some more Van Dyck on my Zoeva 231. And I'm gonna pop that on the edge of the base. And I've gone for a very, very rounded shape today, and I'm going to carry that on underneath. Definitely feel like it's taking a bit more packing on here on the paint, which is interesting. Yeah, I've just come around at a bit of a round angle. Does that mean anything? Alright, let's add some more colours on now. So I think I'm going to go into the shade Crew over here, just on another clean Zoeva 231. It's picking up really, really well actually. And I'm going to pop that half on, half off again. I feel like the pigmentation on this one looks like it's quite nice. Yeah, there we go. I've built it up and it is nice. But I think there is something about the P. Louise paint that's sitting a bit weird maybe. I don't feel like it's something I've really noticed before with matte shades. Anyway, I'm going in with a bit more of Van Dyck just to blend those two in together. I really hope YouTube doesn't demonetize me for saying that shade name over and over again. It's definitely spelt with a Y and not an I, YouTube. Please, please don't. Thank you. Okay, I'm getting on to my last Zoeva 231 brush here. Turns out apparently I need more of that one as well. But I'm going to switch over to this side of the palette and I'm going to go into the shade Riviera. This one is super, super pigmented. It's picked up really, really well. And just the same again here, half on, half off. Just slowly building up that blend. I feel like I could have gone in with a smaller brush, probably. Yeah, that one is really, really, really pigmented. Again, I feel like it just sits a little bit weird with the P. Louise paint. We're having a bit of a struggle up here. I'm gonna go back into a little bit of Crew again. I am just gonna grab the brush that I used to apply the paint because it's maybe a little bit thick. I mean, it is a very thick texture and it is creasing because there's nothing there to set it yet. I'm gonna switch over to a Morphe M152, which is more of a short, flattish brush. And I think we should go into the shade Acid, which is probably one of the most interesting looking shades in the palette. And again, it's picking up very, very well. So let's see how it does on the eye. So again, popping that next to the blue, and the pigmentation on this one is really, really lovely. Yeah, that's really, really nice. I'm out of focus again, aren't I? Sorry guys, I told you, it's really hard to get back into it when you haven't filmed for a couple of weeks, but we are getting there. It wouldn't be a problem if the autofocus on my camera was actually good and stayed in focus, but I think because I'm really close to the camera and also really close to the background, it just messes up. Manual focus it is for now, and actually remembering to focus it. Again, back into some of Riviera. I'd say that the blending here is definitely a bit more difficult than it was on the lid. I do think it's giving a really nice gradient, so I'm just going back and forth between the two. And then a little bit of Van Dyck back here. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, I would say, at this stage. All right, time to finally jump into one of the metallics. It has to be Zesty up here, which is a gorgeous shade of green. So I'm just taking a flat shadow brush. This one is picking up really, really well on the brush. It's not one of those that feels creamy. I would say it definitely does feel a lot drier. And you guys know that one thing that I'm not the biggest fan of is a more creamy metallic formula. I don't always get along with it. So let's pack it on now. I mean, you can see, again, pigmentation wise, absolutely no issues. It's packing on really, really well. But I just have to say that it's not the most interesting shade. Like, you can tell it's not matte, definitely. But can you tell it's metallic? Not really. No, I don't really think that you can see any of that. But in terms of the pigmentation, that side is really nice. You can see that's really pigmented. I haven't even wet the brush and it's packed on really well. It's not overly chunky. I haven't got tons of fallout. It could just be a lot more exciting. I'm sorry, there, I said it. I think it could just be more exciting. I'm just gonna go back into a little bit of Acid. To be fair, the two colors are pretty similar, so it probably doesn't need it. I am finding that the P2E's paint is sitting a bit weird. I think I have got a couple of gaps. I don't know why, that's really annoying. Right, so when I did this look yesterday, I then finished off the cut crease with the shade Tahitian Pearl. I am gonna show you what it looks like. Again, I would say that this one does feel, you know, not particularly creamy. I would say it's the same texture as Zesty. And then if I just start popping it on with a small brush, I mean, it doesn't massively pop, but I would say it definitely looks a little bit more glittery than Zesty does. It's definitely a little bit more interesting. I used it as an inner corner shade and a brow highlight, and I think it's really nice for that. But just for finishing off this cut crease right now, I think I would like it if it was a bit more yellow. I think the color itself isn't super interesting. So instead today I am gonna use a pigment, and it's a really fun color. It is by Be Perfect, and it feels like maybe it's a little bit cheeky to use a Be Perfect pigment when I'm reviewing a dupe of a Be Perfect palette, but it's the shade Insomnia. Oh! I just sprayed a load of pigment over my mirror. It's this shimmery canary yellow. It looks fun. I've picked up some pigment and I'm just gonna spray the brush. And let's see if we can just pop that on right on top of Tahitian Pearl. There we go. Do you see immediately? That's just so much more sparkly. Again, not in focus, am I? Yeah, that's just immediately a lot brighter, a lot more sparkly, just a bit more fun. All right, I'm just gonna go and do the other eye off camera, and when I come back, we will finish off the eye look together and do the lower lash line. All right, guys, my lower lash line is primed, so we're gonna jump straight into it. I'm gonna go back into my Zoeva 231 with a little bit more of Van Dyck and start bringing it out a bit further. We're basically gonna be using the colors from the crease on the lower lash line, so it's just going to outline everything very nicely. Then second is Rex, and I'm kind of working around Van Dyck, so I'm connecting it up from the crease and bringing it a little bit further forwards. Then same with Beads. Really making sure it's nicely connected up to my crease colours. Then Invitation. And I'm not going to go all the way back to the crease now, but I am still kind of dragging it a little bit backwards. Then Living. Again, just going a little bit further forwards and then blending backwards. And then next we're actually going to jump into a new colour. We are going to go into Tuscan Sun up here on a Morphe M456. And that is going to go right at the front in the tear duct. And then again it's going to come backwards. So it's basically blending into my eye creases at this point. My under eye creases. But it just adds a really pretty flash of yellow/orange that I do really, really like. I think I'm going to go back into a little bit of Living. And then to highlight the inner corner, I thought I would try a new shade as well. So I went into Volto and I'm taking a Nancy tapered crease brush. Now this one definitely feels a lot more creamy. I can immediately tell the difference in how it picks up compared to these two over here that I've used before. So I think ideally this is going to be one that's used with your finger, but for the inner corner that gets a little bit difficult. So that's why I'm using the brush. So I'm going to start popping that on. Again, it's not super glittery, but it's definitely more interesting than Zesty was. And then I'm going to pick it up again on a Morphe M508, and this is where it gets a little bit difficult. I just want a little bit right on the brow bone. I feel like it is kind of struggling to deposit it with that brush just because it is so creamy. And then I'm just going to take my Morphe M514 just to blend out slightly. Alright, we are done with the eyeshadow work at that point. We're just going to do a couple of details. First, let's do the lower lash line. I'm going to use my NYX Off Tropic Pro Liner in Mimosa Orange. This is discontinued, so just any sort of orange liner. And then, is it really one of my looks if we don't line the top of the cut crease with a Shein Cosmetics liner? I don't think it is at this point. So I'm going to take the shade Peach Puff from the pastel range. It is the pastel orange. Alright, so that is it for the eye look. I'm just going to finish it off with some lashes. I really like the way it looks. I think the mattes are just coming out as so pigmented. Again, really happy with that. The shimmers for me are where the downfall is a little bit. They just weren't super exciting. I'm gonna go and finish off the rest of the makeup now. I'm also quite hungry. I think I might actually have to take a food break really quickly because I've still got to do the whole intro and everything. If I do that without food, it's gonna be a struggle. So I'm gonna go and finish off the rest of the makeup, and when I come back we will go over my final thoughts on the palette. Alright guys, here is the finished look. I hope as always that you like it. Yes, I had to go and take a lunch break because I was really hungry, and I think if I hadn't eaten I would not be able to concentrate right now. So let's have a chat about my final thoughts on this palette. And guys, I think this could maybe become my favorite palette from W7 out of all the ones that I have. And I'm not saying that lightly. This is my third look that I've done with this palette, so I've had a good little play with it already. Quality wise, I'm really happy with it. As I've said several times already, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but the mattes are great. They do blend out really well. I thought it was a pleasure to work with this palette. Like, I actually enjoyed blending the mattes out. They did take a little bit of building up here and there, but again, it wasn't difficult. It was actually a very enjoyable experience. The metallics, I am a bit more on the fence about. I think some of them look like they're going to be really nice. Some of them apply fine, but they don't look that metallic. You know, I'm going to be playing mostly with the mattes in this palette, and I am pretty happy with the ones that I've tried so far. Price wise, again, I think it is a really good deal. I think you are getting very good quality for what you are paying for. Obviously, I don't know how that compares to the Be Perfect formula. I've heard fantastic things about that one, and obviously that is also very good value for money. And even though £36 isn't a huge amount to spend, not everyone can justify it. So if you do really want the color scheme from the Be Perfect palette, but you just can't justify that amount, £15 is very affordable. And a lot of the time W7 ends up being sold in places like B&M, Home Bargains, TK Maxx, and it ends up even cheaper. So if you wait a little bit, I'm sure you can get it for a very low price. I do understand the drama around it. I do understand that people are upset that this is duping a collaboration palette, but again, if you really are on a budget, you do want that color scheme, it's good. It's really, really good quality. So thank you so much to W7 for sending me this palette and giving me the chance to be part of the campaign. I had a lot of fun. I think this is a great palette and I can't wait to play with it some more. So that is it for today's video, guys. I do hope as always that you enjoyed it. If you did, then do please make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment letting me know what you thought about it. And if you haven't already, then do please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I'll see you all on the next one. Bye, guys.